I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and here today with me is Garrett Goggin, founder of Golden Portfolio. Thank you so much for being here. Great to have you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so good to be catching up with you. This is our first interview since we spoke here at PDAC last year. So much has changed in the gold and silver markets, and I thought we could start just with a question to set the stage. Where do you see us in the cycle right now for gold?
Yeah, as we were talking before, it really seems like it's the moment in time that for gold bugs have been waiting for 50 years. Like, we're there, and gold keeps going higher, and it's driven by the fundamental supply and demand economics. We have China not buying treasures anymore. We have the BRICS not buying treasures anymore. We have the implementation of digital currencies that are taking down gold. And then, we've got Trump and Scott Bessent, and Powell's going to be, leaving the Fed in May. Trump's going to bring rates down to 1%. Steve Moran is on the Fed, and Steve Moran wrote the Mar-a-Lago Accord that proposes devaluing the dollar to make U.S. goods more competitive, and they're going to cut rates to 1%. They're going to devalue the dollar like you can't own long bonds, like it's Nirvana for gold. And it's not changing anytime soon.
Yeah, it's really clear that there are so many drivers in gold's corner right now, and one that I did want to bring up, we've got all these tensions in the Middle East erupting over the weekend. I think important for everybody to know. We're talking on Sunday, so we don't know necessarily what's going to happen when it becomes Monday, but any thoughts on what we see there?
Yeah, well, it's been wild over the past, decade or so. Whenever there's major global tension, you would see the dollar spike up. People would run to the dollar for safety. You'd see bond prices rise, yields decline. But over the past year or so, during major conflicts, we've seen the dollar sell off, and we've seen bonds sell off. Like all this global tension, the U.S. is kind of pushing its weight around the world, and the foreigners, our trade partners, are kind of tired of it. And instead of rushing to the dollar, they're moving away from the dollar. But I was talking about that on Sunday when the market opens on Sunday too. But you know what? Like, I'm watching Tether gold trade right now. Tether spiked up $200 from the close. It trades 24/7, 365, and you can see it. It's up about $100 from Friday's close right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen on Sunday. But yeah, we could see the dollar decline and gold go higher. Like, gold is a better store of value than the dollar, obviously, and that's what people want.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit more about Tether and what we're seeing right now. I know you've been writing a lot about what's going on. Tether has its gold stablecoin. It's also become a major buyer of gold in its own right. How significant is this?
Yeah, this is wild. I call it my Beaver Creek Accord because we're out in Beaver Creek at the big gold show, and Fred Bell, the CEO of Elemental Royalties, came to me and he goes, "Garrett, you got to meet this guy," and it was Juan Satori. And I started talking to Juan, who is the head of business development at Tether. And Juan's like, "Listen, we're buying 2 tons of gold per week." I'm like, "What?" That's whatever, 50 tons per year. That puts him in one of the world's largest gold buyers. And he goes, "Listen, this Tether gold token is going to be bigger than Tether dollar. Tether dollar has got like a 200, 300 billion in assets. Tether gold only has, 200 mil, 300 mil, because people don't. The Tether dollar, it provides exposure to the U.S. dollar, and it doesn't pay interest, right? So, people are going to start at Tether dollar, and then they're going to move right into Tether gold because gold is a store of value. And the knock on gold, right, for 100 years is, you talk to people that aren't into gold, they're like, "Oh, what are you going to do, shave off some of your gold bar and pay for a coffee?" It's like, "Nah, dude, I have Tether gold. I owe, $3. It's like, here's 0.001 of, to be Tether gold, tap on your cell phone." And then my line is the combination of gold, the world's best store of value for 1,000 years, combined with crypto's frictionless exchange, and in the ability to transfer instantaneously, makes the world's ultimate currency.
Well, and we talked last year about the lack of interest in gold from generalists, and it feels like this is starting to send us in the way of more attention from the mainstream. So to what extent do you think gold has...
Yeah, we're not there yet. I track a lot of metrics. I track GLD shares outstanding. It's still below the 2011 high. SLV shares outstanding, still below. I track S&P market cap compared to like the GLD market cap, and it's, at 0.003 at the last top. It was like 0.00 1-2%, like 4x higher. Like the generalist is not in. And one of the things, like I'm a fundamental guy. I try to buy $1 worth of free cash, for dimes. And Lundin Gold, it's the best gold mine in the world, Fruta del Norte. They just came out with earnings, and the CEO said, "Listen, we're distributing all of our free cash to shareholders." They bumped up the dividend to $1.15 per share. That's $4.60 per year. That's like a 7% dividend yield, like on one of the best gold mines in the world. And it's fair value. The average gold miner trades for about a 1% dividend yield, puts the fair value of Lundin Gold at $460 per share. Like this is a layup. And if the generalists and the investors were in the market, Lundin Gold would be priced a lot higher, and it's not. There's still an opportunity. And then if you use the current price of gold over $5,000, the dividend jumps to like $6.50. Like it's amazing value found in the best gold miner in the world. And at the top, we're not going to find that value.
So that's one area that you are looking in terms of opportunity in the gold stocks. In general, how are you approaching the gold equities right now?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's been really hard getting my mind around. There's been so many changes over the past year, like with Trump and the critical metals and silver and gold. We've had projects that have been dead for 10 years, 20 years. And then I'm like, that project's not going anywhere. I've known it for 20 years. And then all of a sudden it gets fast-tracked, like overnight. And it's a go, and now it's worth billions and billions of dollars. One of the royalties, it was Spring Valley, owned by Spring Valley. Sailfish has got a 3% NSR on it. And I'm like, we got to add this to the portfolio. And then they ended up selling their Spring Valley royalty, got acquired 2 weeks later. Like the pace that things are moving right now is absolutely staggering. And then I've been covering a lot of the silver companies for, say 20, 25 years, and it's never been a good investment. They'll bump, like Core and Hecla, they'll bump from 500 mil profits in a quarter, or gross profit, back down to 0, 250, 0, 500, 0. Well, now, with the higher price of silver, they're making like $3 billion, $4 billion. Like the spike and the value creation is absolutely enormous. And it's going to be really interesting to see what these miners are going to do with all their profits going forward. Like, we're in a new era.
Well, and you had written recently on X that Core and Hecla need to get that activist investor treatment. So I wonder, can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, what's his name? John Paulson and Marcelo Kim, they came into the Denver Gold Group, I think in 2016, 2017, they did an activist. They're like, you guys need to create value, you guys need to do this. But, it wasn't, they weren't holding the miners' feet to the fire. They were calling them out for the lack of value creation. But like an activist investor, the activist investor, they see the company worth, this much. And then they see the company trading for only this much, and they go, listen, if you sell off this, and if you do this, and if you increase the dividend, and you, buy back shares, you will increase the value. So like some of the New York guys that are, ruthless, like Carl Icahn, and some of them, they'll come in, they see the value on the table, they'll come in, they'll shake up management, they'll get them doing, shareholder creative things, and they'll push the share price higher, so everyone will make money. And I just see the value on the table right now that is not being unlocked because they're still running the companies the same way they were 20 years ago, and we're in a new place right now.
Well, are there any companies, silver or gold, that you think are adapting to the current environment and they're doing a really good job for their shareholders?
Yeah, Lundin Group,
yeah, as you said.
NGX, they spun off Jose Maria, and then they spun off a couple other projects, and they spin it out right to shareholders. Lundin Gold just sold a silver stream to Lunar Royalties, and it's 500,000 silver ounces per year, and Lunar Royalties paid 50 million shares for it, and Lundin Gold is spinning that right out to shareholders. And a lot of companies, they won't do that. They'll hold it on their balance sheet. They'll manage the position. They'll choose to sell it, and management end up making more money, and the bankers get rich. But you need to find the groups where the management is focused on, shareholders first. And, these free stock dividends are straight value right to shareholders. So I stick with groups like that.
And I want to ask, in terms of the stocks, how you're approaching taking profits at the moment, because at the end of January, when we had gold and silver prices really running, there was a lot of talk. I was at VRC in Vancouver, a lot of talk about are people taking profits. So what have you been doing?
I was there. I'm like mentally I was there because, the silver price, I do a daily regression versus gold. It's like a gold silver ratio, but it's a regression back to 1970. And silver reached a level when it was at $120 that it was like 70% overvalued versus its predicted price versus gold. And the last times that happened were in 1980 and 2011, both major blow off tops for silver, and silver was uninvestable for the next 10 years, 20 years. And the top happened and the overvaluation happened, and then it's sold off here, but it's hanging in there. And like the demand is there. Like fundamentally, we're in a different place, and silver's at $90 an ounce, and it's hanging on there, and it looks like it's going to stay there. And just the profits that are being generated at $90 an ounce silver, are, staggering. Yeah. And there's a lot of little silver companies that were not really profitable when silver was at 30 and 40, and lower grade stuff, but now they're just gushing cash. And there's some projects that have been around for a while, like Cordero by Levon Mine, and it's been around for 30 years. It's like really low grade, and it's never really worked. And now Discovery Silver owns it, and now it looks like it's going to work. You know what I mean? Because the economics are pushed so much higher by the higher price of silver. And then Karani. That's been around for 30 years, never really worked. It looks like it might work at these prices. So it's a real mind shift. It's a new era in mining right here.
Well, and on the note of the silver stocks you're mentioning before we turn the camera on, we probably want to talk about what's going on in Mexico. There's a lot of turmoil there right now, and I think investors might not know. Should they be in Mexico right now? Any thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, like if you like silver, you have to have exposure to Mexico, because Mexico has produced 90% of the world's silver over, history. All the world's silver, it's produced from Mexico. Mexico hasn't been, the safest place to do business. Vizsla's got the best Panuco project like in the world. The grade is like 600 grams a ton. There's nothing like it. It reminds me of, Mag Silver's Juanicipio. It reminds me of Silvercrest Las Chispas. And this is the best project in the world. And, 10 of their employees got kidnapped, and they found them dead. Like, it's awful. It's absolutely tragic. And then the Mexican government and with U.S. forces went in and launched an all-out attack on the cartel. Like, you cannot let the cartel win. There's too much money on the table. And I really think that, you need to take advantage of the dip in prices, because, Jalisco State and the other states in Mexico, in the future, they could be one of the most safest places to mine due to this crackdown on cartel activity. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's too much money there. Yeah. Like, this is the time. Take advantage of it.
Okay. I think that's a good attitude to have about the situation. And you started to talk about what is driving silver right now. You mentioned we're above $90 per ounce right now. So let's talk a little bit more about that. It feels like we're getting to a market where holding the actual physical metal is getting so much more important.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been the same story for 20 years. Like, I kind of been writing about it for 20 years. Solar demand, right? Like battery technology, electric cars. Silver's been in the supply demand deficit of 100 million ounces plus for 6-7 years. So it's just a matter of time before the silver price caught up. But, for a long time, the U.S. has been running a strong dollar policy, right? It's conspiracy theory. It's like they've been managing the price of gold, they've been managing the price of silver, and it's like, you can sell as many futures as you want. Like, don't let gold get too high, don't let silver get too high, because when gold gets too high, people are going to lose faith in the dollar, and the dollar is going to lose its world reserve status. But now, our current administration is running a weak dollar policy, and honestly, like Trump and Bissett, they're like, who cares if gold goes to 10,000? Who cares if gold goes to 20? More people are going to make money. Like, what's wrong with that? It's good. And I think it's a shift in, government policy that's helping, silver and gold find their, fair value after 20, 30, 40, 50 years of suppression.
Well, and in addition to that, silver now a critical mineral, at least in the U.S. So that also seems like it adds to the story there.
Yeah, no doubt. The critical mineral is interesting. We need it. We've been relying on China for a lot of rare earths and a lot of critical minerals. And, God forbid, what if we went to war with China? We wouldn't be able to build anything ourselves. So now they bring it back on the table. But one of the funny things is, Tomahawk missile. They're like, oh, there's 500 ounces of silver in each Tomahawk missile. And I told Keith Neumeyer, that CEO of First Project, he goes, well, we should go mine Iran or Iraq then, like with all the Tomahawk cruise missiles. But I don't think it's that much. Silver's used for, and it's used for solder, like in a lot of the retail applications, the connection points. But in military applications, they do use silver wires, right? Because they don't care how much it costs, and they want to have it. Silver's the most conductive metal, so they do want it, the best they possibly can. So there is a lot of silver in military applications, but I don't think it's probably close to like maybe 5 ounces of silver in each Tomahawk missile. Yeah.
Well, and let's go back to the silver manipulation idea that you were mentioning, because I think it's on a lot of people's minds right now, especially after last week with the whole CME group thing once again. So what's really going on? What are you seeing?
In between doing the fundamental analysis, I build my spreadsheets and I do the research. I trade silver futures, on the COMEX. And it's so far so good, and it's done great. But like, was it Thursday or Friday? Like COMEX, they're like, gold and silver halted for trading, and all of a sudden I noticed it going tick tick tick. It wasn't moving, and it was flatline. I'm like, what's going on? They had to look, and COMEX shut them down again, and I forget their reason, what it was, but if you look into it, the March contract was rolling off, we're rolling into May, and then when that happens, deliveries are announced. And supposedly the COMEX, they spoke to the guys that wanted delivery, and they're like, listen, just hang on for another month. Don't take delivery here. Just roll it out another month, and then you can take delivery there. But then that also happened on Thanksgiving. Like, silver was bumping up. It was going like 78, 79, 80, and it looked like it was really going to raise the roof. And then all of a sudden it was like, COMEX halted for trading due to the servers overheated. Like, this is ridiculous stuff that you've never heard before. And then it opened up, a day or two after that, and then it traded straight up to like 120. It just went right up. So there's definitely smoke there. It's hard to put your finger, upon what exactly it is, but there's a lot of demand for silver, and there's not enough supply to go around. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's definitely things going on there. And do you subscribe? There's people who are talking about, is the COMEX going to default? Do you subscribe to that idea?
I don't know. I see the COMEX losing pricing power, the East versus the West, where the East, China, they're going to be driving the price, performance, and the COMEX is going to lag behind. Because the COMEX is losing relevance because the demand is so high in the East. So I see it as a gradual thing. I don't think we're going to wake up one night and see, But, it's interesting with London, the London Futures Exchange and the LBMA, and, the gold fix that they do twice a day. And there's no transparency on any of that. And now with like digital gold and digital silver, like if you go to Tether's website, they don't trade silver, but they got the Tether gold. They're like, listen, we own this many gold bars and they're worth this much. The visibility is, extremely transparent, and that's the sort of thing that we're going to be moving to. Just these old archaic institutions that provide no visibility, like no one's going to use them anymore.
Yeah, those are massive trends that definitely seem to be unfolding in the industry. Anything else really key in gold or silver that you think investors might be missing right now?
Yeah, I don't know. There's like a million things right now, but I would just say, be patient. Hang on for the longer term, and don't try to trade it. Just go. We're going higher. Like in the Bitcoin bill by Cynthia Loomis, there's a clause in there. It's like, listen, we're going to revalue gold, on the Fed's balance sheet to the current price of gold, and we're going to use it to establish the Bitcoin reserve through like accounting sleight of hand. But gold is held on the Fed's balance sheet at $40 an ounce. You start valuing it at $10,000, then that would be probably, I don't know, like $7 or $8 trillion, which covers a portion of the U.S. $38 trillion of that. You start throwing $20,000 an ounce and $25,000 an ounce, that covers like 30-35% of the U.S. debt. Like a revaluation, like it's coming. Like every day you wake up and there's always some news and some smoke, and you just follow the message that's being delivered. Like gold, U.S. is going to revalue gold at some point. I don't know when exactly, but it's going to happen. And then the best way to manage your portfolio is sit down and your personal situation. Go, listen, I want 20% tech, 10% healthcare, 10% finance, 10%, 20% gold stocks, 25%. And then what you do is when your allocation of gold stocks gets up to 30%, sell a little bit. Right. And take it back down to 25% and buy the stuff that hasn't done as well. Maybe technology, or maybe this, maybe that. That's the easiest way to do it. Therefore, you're not like timing the market, saying, "Oh, it looks high, I'm going to sell it. It looks low, I'm going to buy it." You're managing, your own portfolio, and yeah, it's with the higher price of gold. Yeah, there was one other thing, but I'll think about it in a second.
Well, and I'll ask you, so when you're trimming, one of the questions that people have had is, all right, if I'm taking profits in gold and silver, where might I want to deploy them next in the resource sector? So any thoughts on that?
Oh, in the resource sector? I don't know.
Or somewhere else.
It's just you want to buy the stuff that's low and, try to... take profits in the stuff that's high. But, a golden portfolio, in all portfolios actually, 5% or less of your positions make up 95% of your gains. So you're going to have losers, but you're going to have big winners. Like, don't take all your profits off the table on your, big winners. Hang on to it, because those big winners, they have intrinsic things that are going right there that they're probably going to be intrinsically right in a year or two or three, and they're going to continue being, leaders in the industry, driving price performance. So, yeah, I tell people to stick with their winners.
Well, that sounds like a good place to wrap up, unless you remembered your thought that you had.
No. No.
Okay. Well, we'll finish there. Thank you so much for coming on to go over what's happening in gold and silver. This was great.
Excellent. Thank you, Charlotte.
Amazing. And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and this is Garrett Goggin with Golden Portfolio.